Mark slid into the driver's seat, ready to head home after a long day. But as he reached for his seatbelt, he froze. A black briefcase sat on the passenger seat. His heart skipped a beat. He didn't own a briefcase. He hadn't given anyone a ride, and his car had been locked. Mark looked around the parking lot. Empty, silent. He touched the briefcase. It was cold and heavy, locked. A strange feeling crept over him. Someone had put it here, but who and why? Not knowing what else to do, he started the car. He would take it home. At home, Mark sat on his couch, staring at the briefcase. Sat there, almost watching him. He tried to open it, but the lock wouldn't budge. His phone buzzed. Do not open it. Do not take it to the police. Mark's hand shook as he read the message. No number. No name. His mind raced. How did they know? He tried to tell himself it was a prank, but deep down he felt something was wrong. The briefcase was quiet, but he knew it wasn't harmless. The next day, Mark noticed something strange. A black SUV had been following him since he left work. He tried to shake it off, but the car stayed close, turning when he turned, stopping when he stopped. That night, he heard a noise outside his apartment. He peeked through the window. No one was there, but his heart raced. Then his phone buzzed again. Meet at midnight. Bring the case. Mark felt his stomach tighten. Someone was watching him, and they weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. Mark drove to the address the text had given him, an empty parking lot at the edge of town. He parked and waited, his hands sweating. The only sound was the hum of distant traffic. Then, a figure in a hooded jacket appeared from the shadows. Do you have it? The person asked, their voice low. Mark nodded, holding the briefcase tightly. Give it to me, the figure said, pulling out a wad of cash. But Mark hesitated. Something didn't feel right. No, he said, stepping back. I want to know what's inside. The figure's eyes narrowed. They pulled out a gun. Give me the case, or things will get messy, they warned. Mark's heart raced. The cold metal of the gun glinted in the dim light. He could feel the fear rising inside him, but he knew he couldn't back down now. The figure stepped closer, still holding the gun. I'm not asking again, they said, their voice cold and threatening. Mark's mind was spinning. He had to do something. He couldn't just hand over the briefcase. But what choice did he have? Then, without thinking, he acted. He threw the briefcase as hard as he could. It landed on the ground with a loud thud, sliding a few feet away from him. The figure's attention snapped to the case. In that moment, Mark bolted. He ran as fast as he could, his feet pounding against the pavement. Behind him, he heard the figure yell and the sound of footsteps following. Mark's breath came in short gasps as he sprinted through the dark streets. The figure was gaining on him. He could hear their heavy footsteps getting closer. He glanced over his shoulder, but he couldn't see them anymore. He didn't dare stop to look again. His pulse raced as he turned down a narrow alley, hoping the darkness would hide him. The alley was tight, but he knew he had to keep moving. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Mark heard the sharp crack of the bullet, followed by a whistling sound as it flew past him. He didn't stop to check if it had hit anything. He just ran faster. His lungs burned and his legs ached, but he couldn't slow down. He had to get away. He turned another corner, hoping to lose the figure in the maze of streets. The gunshot echoed in the distance, but no more shots came. He had a small head start now. Mark kept running deeper into the city. He was sweating, his clothes sticking to his skin. His mind raced, wondering if the figure was still following him. He dared not look back. After what felt like forever, Mark finally slowed to a stop. He was in a quiet neighborhood now, far from the parking lot. He leaned against a street lamp, gasping for breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. He didn't know what had just happened, but he knew one thing for sure. He was lucky to be alive. He couldn't stop thinking about the briefcase. What was in it? Why had someone been willing to chase him down, to threaten him for something inside that case? For a long moment, Mark just stood there, trying to calm himself. He glanced around, half expecting the figure to appear again. But there was no one. Mark took a deep breath and made his way home, his mind still racing. He didn't know who was after the briefcase or why, but he knew he couldn't let this go. He had to find out what was inside. A few days later, Mark saw a news report on TV. A government official had gone missing. His car had been found abandoned, with a briefcase missing. Mark felt a chill run down his spine. Was that the same briefcase? Was it really that important? He never found out what was inside, but he knew one thing for sure: he was lucky to be alive. And he would never forget that night,